I've never met a man who was the spiritual leader of his home whose marriage was disintegrating. These are men who have backslidden. These are men who haven't put the Lord first. It's like, brother, when was the last time you laid hands on your wife and on her to pray for her? When was the last time you put hands on your wife's shoulders and prayed over her? When was the last time you prayed with your wife? When was the last time, right, you did something nice for your wife that wasn't that didn't have strings attached or an expectation attached to it?
Tim Arrigo, is that how you say your last name?
Right.
Dude, I love it. Man, excited to talk to you. I feel like you exude this confidence. You're often walking probably behind your house on trails, and you're just talking to the phone, and you appear to be someone who knows what you're talking about and really believe what you're talking about. There's a confidence. A lot of people sometimes fake it till they make it. I believe that you really deep down know and believe what you're saying. And so to have a good marriage, I know there's a lot of pre-work and there's a lot of conflict and there's a lot of stuff that has happened for years and years before that. I'm interested to go back to what formed you, your experiences that formed you, the good and the bad, to get to that point where you're talking confidently to men about how to save their marriage and be a man.
Yeah. Lots of experiences. In the very beginning for me, it was growing up in a home where my parents didn't have a good marriage, and I witnessed a lot of dysfunction in the home, and, just a lot of the home it was confusing because it was a place of chaos and turmoil, and it could be tumultuous at times, but at the same time, my family, we loved each other and we did care about each other, and we did have, great times, but the problem was in my home is that we never talked about anything, and especially us as men. I have an older brother, and me, my brother, and my father, like, we were never close. We never talked about how we felt. We never connected on a deep level. And I'm a very sensitive person. I'm very sensitive. I'm intuitive. I'm empathic. I'm highly compassionate. Like, I feel stuff, right? Like, I'm very much that way. It's how God created me. And growing up, I was always kind of confused about, like, what do I do with this? And I kind of looked at it like, well, this is a liability because it doesn't serve me very well in this environment, and it doesn't serve me very well out in the world either. So I need to learn how to deal with this. And early on in my life, the number one thing I found that worked best for that were drugs. And I used drugs as a way to cope.
How old were you when you started?
And I first started using drugs, I was about 12, started smoking weed, started doing acid and mushrooms and stuff, probably 13 years old. Smoked crack cocaine for the first time at 14.
Wow.
And then started methamphetamine at about 16, went into the psych unit at 17, went into my first treatment center at 17, got addicted to Oxycontin at 19, and became a full-on heroin addict by the age of 20, with a needle in my neck in a Starbucks bathroom.
Oh my goodness.
And my life was basically just running and gunning, and it was so painful for me looking back. I remember so many times, like, I almost felt like, man, I'm living this life, and it's like, this is not who I am. Like, I'm not this person, but I don't know. I'm so far removed from who I actually am. I don't even know who I am anymore. And it's very painful to have to get off of drugs and face everything you've been running from your whole life, right? And when I finally did that, that came with a white light experience. And I was diagnosed with hepatitis C, and I had watched a friend of mine the year before die right in front of me from hepatitis C. I watched his liver get cirrhotic. He was an older guy. He was like a father figure to me. He was like an older brother to me. His name was Scott. And I watched him die slowly in front of me. Was there when he took his last breath. So when I got my diagnosis, I kind of thought it was like a death sentence. Right? Like, oh, it's over for me. Like, and based on my viral load and the genotype I had and the way my liver looked, they were just saying, it's not. If you don't treat this, it doesn't look good for you. So apparently it was chronic, and I had it for a long time. And so, man, 27 years old, 28 years old, I was laying on my bed and I had a white light experience. I actually came out of my body. I had a white light experience, and I experienced this peace that just came over me. You know, when it says in the word, the peace that surpasses all understanding,
Yeah.
that peace came over me. I felt it. And I felt it for about 3 seconds, and then I came back into my body, and I was like, was that me? Was that my life? And the voice of God spoke to me and said, this whole time you thought you were in control, but really you're just a slave. And immediately I wanted to get off of everything, and the hospital wouldn't take me. And because I was on methadone and I was doing interferon at the time, which is like kind of like chemotherapy. So I proceeded to go through this detox at my house with some detox meds that I had gotten from a doctor. And I did a grassroots detox at my house off methadone, Xanax, and did it while I was on the interferon. And about 3 days in, I threw up my hands, hit my knees in my boxers, and I said, Jesus, if you're really real, come into my life. And I said, I'll serve you for the rest of my life. If you're really real, take my life. You can kill me right now. And I did a full-on, like, real surrender with my life. Like, I fully died to myself. And the Lord, the Holy Spirit, I was just like a lightning bolt. The Holy Spirit just boom and came into my life. And immediately after that detox, I was so motivated to share my story and to help people.
Man, that's a heck of a story. Holy cow. So it started as a young teenager and went into your late 20s. And then were you able to work during these times? Like, were you living at home? Like, what was you said you're married for a little while. Like, how did you function while addicted and using like that?
Um, I sold drugs.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I sold drugs. I doctor shopped. I had a knee injury that I had from the opiate prescription. And once you kind of have a history of prescription medication, you can kind of, at the time, this was like early 2000s. And so things were different. And so it was kind of like the wild, wild west in terms of, pain clinics and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
I really exploited that opportunity to
Interesting.
not only supply my habit, but also um, to supply
Yeah.
whatever it was, if my lifestyle. So, and it was hard realizing at the end, like, I had hurt a lot of people. Like, I had sold narcotics to a lot of people, in terms
Mhm.
of pills, and but when you're in that experience, you're not really thinking about any of that, right? Like,
Dude,
there my
you're a slave, right? You're just a
totally.
slave.
No, my conscience was so corrupted that I couldn't even hear the voice of my conscience.
Can you give me a vision of what an awesome marriage is like? Kind of like a carrot at the end of the stick, something that we can, and want to incentivize us to, change ourselves and be the servant leader. Can you give us that
Yeah,
vision to make us want to do the work?
absolutely. So it's important that we understand that trust is the cornerstone of every healthy relationship. And with trust comes respect, right? Because they're kind of, in a lot of ways, they run parallel to one another. It's like, if I trust my wife, there's also a layer of respect that comes with that trust, right? And if I respect my wife, there's also a layer of trust that comes with that respect. And those things are hard and difficult to build back, but they come with, if I share maybe something with my wife, or my wife shares something with me, what it encourages me to do in the moment is, I look at it like this. In a healthy marriage, every trigger becomes an opportunity. So things that used to trigger me inside my marriage, actually, I realize, are opportunities for me to really get to the root of what is actually transpiring. Inside of a healthy marriage, we know each other fully. As a man, the intimacy emotionally that I should have with my wife should exceed any relationship I've ever had with anyone in my entire life. Meaning, my wife should know everything about me. I should be able to be so honest with my wife that I'm complete. She knows everything. On the other hand, my wife feels so, she trusts me so much and she feels so secure in my presence because of my consistency and because of the way that I've been consistent. Our inconsistency as men makes women insecure,
Mm.
right? So if I'm like up and down and up and down, like she's going to feel uneasy naturally, right?
Do
So
you mean about like being open and communicative and then you drop off and then coming back?
I
What?
think like, even if it's like, oh, I'm going to stop drinking. And then you start drinking again.
Okay.
It's like, or I'm going to stop hanging out with Todd. And then all of a sudden it's like, where were you after work? And it's like, well, I stopped by Todd's house. It's like, well, wait, hang on a second.
Hmm.
I thought you said you were not hanging out with Todd. It's like when we're not consistent in our word, right? What actually happens is it makes them insecure, right? Because it's like, well, we're providing, we're the head of the household, like we're leading. And a lot of times we don't recognize that her insecurity can manifest in a lot of different forms. So it's trust, it's respect, it's openness, it's raw, brutal honesty. And our wives feel so secure in our presence that there is no presence of insecurity. Because the problem is a lot of men don't live a radically transparent life inside their marriage. And so their wife always entrusts us like we need to trust our wives that they know and they feel that and they can tell. Like when we're not being 100% truthful, your wife can take one look at you and say like something's off.
Hmm.
What's going on? And it's like, oh, nothing. It's like, no, something's going on. And many men don't get honest with their wives because they're afraid of how their wife might react to that honesty, right? And what I've discovered in my marriage is that the more honest that I've been, the more secure it's made my wife. But I've also realized that as men, a lot of times we think a lot of things that we don't say,
Hmm.
right? And we have a tendency a lot of times to say the things that we should just be thinking, right? So it's like I'm sharing something negative, but yet I'm thinking something positive, but I won't share it,
Hmm.
right? So it's like it's important that we do remember that in order to create that, to make our wives feel assured inside the relationship, it's like, am I being the source of what I seek? So many guys are like, I want respect. I demand respect inside my marriage. And it's like, well, bro, like you don't really want respect. You want emotional connection. You want mutual understanding, right?
Hmm.
Like you want validation. And the question is, instead of demanding that from a place of control, right? Like, why don't you become the source of what you're seeking? So why don't you become the source of what you want and recognize it's the law of reciprocity? It will come back at you inside the marriage, right? And the issue is a lot of times that especially inside marriages is that we don't we don't point out we don't really recognize the opportunities that we have, right, to build the marriage up. From the Gottman Institute, like, John Gottman, when they did all the research on marriage, they had established that basically what makes marriages survive, all healthy marriages, whether the couples argue or not, is irrelevant as much as the fact that there's a 5-to-1 ratio. And that means for every negative experience, right, there's 5 positive ones or 4 positive ones. So a lot of guys are trying to eliminate the negativity in the marriage and they're taking the wrong approach. You should be increasing the positivity. How many opportunities do we have throughout the day to pour into our wife, to say, hey, you look so beautiful today? Something simple, or hey, coming downstairs, she's busy in the kitchen. You just look at her and you're like, hey, is there anything I can do for you right now? I would also say that, you need to have your own life too, because a lot of times as men, we assume that having a better marriage is making our marriage the number one priority in our life, making our wife our number one pursuit. It's like your number one pursuit needs to be the Lord, and it needs to be becoming a better man, becoming the man of God that you need to be, right? So, and especially, I'll say this: I've never met a man who was the spiritual leader of his home whose marriage was disintegrating. These are men who have backslidden. These are men who haven't put the Lord first. It's like, brother, when was the last time you laid hands on your wife and on her to pray for her? When was the last time you put hands on your wife's shoulders and prayed over her? When was the last time you prayed with your wife? When was the last time, right, you did something nice for your wife that wasn't, that didn't have strings attached or an expectation attached to it. It's like, I I think it's crazy that as a man, and this has always been so backwards for me, that why would you want to exalt yourself over somebody and not be equals with a person that is one of the greatest assets that the Lord has ever given you, is your marriage. So why would you want to like crap where you eat? Like, why would you want to destroy something that brings so much fruit to you as a man? Because every man who has a great marriage understands that at moments of weakness in his life, because every man has them, at moments of weakness in his life, who does he usually go to? His wife. And guess what his wife does? When he's constantly pouring into his marriage, his wife says, honey, you're tripping. You're doing such a great job. Look at me. You're doing great. And as men, like, man, I'll tell you, our 99% of the time, our love language is words of affirmation. So if a woman is listening to this, if we were just for 30 days, I tell everybody, take this 30-day challenge and give a compliment to your wife every day for 30 days. And wives, give a compliment to your husband every day for 30. Yeah, well, I don't really, my husband, I don't want to give him compliments. He doesn't deserve. Okay, watch. Watch when you give him a compliment for 30 days, watch how he changes. Watch how when you give your wife a compliment every day for 30 days that things change. Genuine compliments. And then what happens is I create a culture inside of my marriage of appreciation, of gratitude. When was the last time that you got out your wedding book or your wedding video and watched it with your wife? Right? When was the last time you talked about your honeymoon, talked about your wedding, stirred up some nostalgia? Right? When was the last time you went on a walk with your wife and held her hand and just walked outside? Right? When was the last time, right, that you really sat and you opened up and had a deep conversation with your wife where you guys were laying next to each other in bed? It's like looking for these opportunities. And as men, a lot of times, like when our marriage is not working, we have a tendency to go out into the areas of our life where we do feel validated, where we do feel worth, and we do feel recognized. And 99% of the time, that's our business. That's our work. Because the work is a place that I can perform, feel like I'm loved, get validation, and escape. It's like work addiction, the one addiction you can have where you're considered a success. Right? So we have to have that balance. And I see so many people like, well, balance doesn't exist because yeah, it does exist. It does exist. It's like, well, if you're doing this, well, it can't exist because if you're doing this, you're not really doing this. Like, check it out, bro. We're talking about the bigger picture here. Balance does exist in your life and you need balance. Anybody that doesn't have balance doesn't have children, right? They don't understand the concept of balance, because have some kids and now you need balance. It's amazing. All these coaches want to talk about no balance, but they don't have kids or a wife, right? So you got kids and a wife, you need balance. You need balance. You need to turn off your phone. You put your phone away in the car, leave it upstairs in the office. You need to detach. You need to be connected to whatever you're connected to in that moment. And, so I would say those are a couple things. Also, inside my marriage, something that's always worked for me is I've always been, I love to see my wife win. So like anytime I have the opportunity to, I try to get my wife excited about something new that she can do. Right? Because a lot of women, it's like their identity becomes being in the home, supporting the family. And I'm so grateful. My wife, she's a homesteader. Like she loves to make she makes everything from scratch. Like she, is all natural. Everything's homeopathic, right? It's like homeschooling the kids, all that stuff. But at the same time, as men, we need to recognize that our wives, they need something too to hold on to. So it was an opportunity for me to say, hey, I'm taking the kids, honey, go do whatever you want today. Go enjoy the day. I'm taking the kiddos. We're going to go down to the park and go to the water slides. Do your thing, right? Go do your thing for the day. And I think it's just amazing to me. It's like, what if you approached every moment in your marriage from a place of love? In Corinthians, Corinthians 13, it says, right? Love is patient. Love is kind. right?
You just pre-answered my next question and ideas. Like whoever's listening and you want to make a change and you're going out there and you try to go on a walk with your wife, or you make a compliment and then she doesn't accept it, or she does, it backfires, and you're like, you know what? You can't give up. That's your ego. Love is long suffering. Love is charitable. Love laughs. You're not doing it for that reaction right there. You're doing it because you value yourself. You value your marriage. And so, guys, don't give up. It's not about it's not transactional. In fact, don't be surprised if that happens. If the pattern has been, sarcastic and toxic in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, just don't give up. Do it because it's the right thing to do. Ask God for help. I mean, Tim, I'm just kind of regurgitating what you said, and I'm super inspired by it.
That was super powerful what you just said, and that made me think, a lot of guys, they look at their wife's reaction to what they do as evidence of whether or not they should do it again, or evidence of whether or not it's good or bad. It's like, don't use your wife's reaction as a litmus test to determine like whether or not you should keep doing something. It's like, yeah, obviously look within yourself. Was my heart in the right place? Were my motives pure and my intention correct? And here's the thing, brothers, it's like, at the end of the day, don't you win anyways? Because then aren't you starting to really get clarity about the condition of this marriage? If you're doing everything right and you're doing everything you need to be doing, and you're striving to live above reproach, which is being in a position where the finger can't be pointed at you anymore, right?
And even if it is, you're not offended and you don't take it to heart.
Yes, because I know who I am. And look, at the end of the day, I have peace. And a lot of men struggle inside a relationship because they feel like they're never enough. They feel like no matter what they do, it's never enough. And it's like, bro, I can't be everything in the world and everything inside this marriage. Like, I'm drained, man. And it's like, yeah. So what is that telling you, right? Is there something in your life that you need to pull back on a little bit, right? Is there something you need to give God control of again, right? Is there something that you need to lay at the foot of the cross to let go of and stop carrying this burden, right? And never give up on your marriage. If your marriage is on the rocks, be in a position to say, hey, you know what? The best thing I could do right now is change the man that shows up to this marriage by continuing to work on me. Because at the very least, it'll make me more tolerant of what's happening. It'll help me have more patience, more acceptance. And like you mentioned, it'll help me really endure this trial and this season, because the enemy wants to destroy marriages. The enemy, he wants to end your marriage. He wants you in the fetal position. He wants you watching porn, high, drunk, anesthetized, intoxicated, and inept in leading your family and being the man that God created you to be. So it's super easy to get discouraged, and I think at the end of the day, the more consistent we are, the more disciplined we are, you're going to put off an energy of, I know who I am and I'm a catch and I'm a good man. And it's not ego, it's not arrogance, it's I'm not desperate. I'm not desperate for anything. I'm not desperate or needy in any way. I know who I am, and I know the way I live my life. And I strive to live a righteous life. I strive to live above reproach. I'm not perfect, but I hold myself accountable to a standard that holds me, right, to a position in my life where I have the confidence, because confidence comes from being good at something, and I'm good at being me. I'm good at striving to be better every day, and I'm a leader. I'm a true leader, and every good leader is also a follower, and we put Christ first in our life. And it's an opportunity, if you're struggling in your marriage, recommit your life to the Lord. Put the Lord first in your life, right? Connect with some other men. Iron sharpens iron, right? Get around some other men. Get the support from other men. There's tons of ministries out there to help. That's why we have our ministry. That's why you have this podcast. That's why, guys, you're listening to this. Don't give up. It's so easy to go, well, this doesn't apply to me. Well, I hear what he's saying, but I've tried that, and I've done that. And bro, just be patient. You didn't get here overnight in this marriage like this overnight. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes perseverance. But the greatest thing is when you come out the other side from this experience, it's only going to make you guys closer anyways. And just give it time. Give it time. And sometimes you need to embrace the space. Stop chasing your wife down. Stop pursuing your wife. Pursue the Lord. Embrace the space. Let her see the changes in you rather than you talking about it and expecting, okay, I'll work on myself if you start to work on yourself. Oh, I'll work on myself if you change the way you're acting. Just stop. Stop all that. Stop all of it. You're doing this for you. You're doing this to become a better man, because that's the greatest gift you could ever give your marriage, ever give your children, ever give humanity, is a better version of you.
Amen. Dude, I would even suggest that what you're saying that we should be like is how God treats us. Where we turn our back on God all the time. We get offended. We get mad at God. We ignore God. But his hand is, he says, even though your sins are scarlet red, my hand is outstretched still. He's always outstretched. And so we have the model. We have the book. We have the example. And that's the path. The path that's already before us. We can change. We can become that man of God, that good husband, the one that can go to bed at night, lay your head on the pillow, and know that you did your best for the day. And that's a better feeling than giving up and blaming and all the bad stuff that we can fall into. So Tim, dude, this has been incredibly enlightening. I'm so glad that we met. I know you have your ministry. It's can people find you on Instagram at Beyond Driven? Is that correct?
Yeah, at Beyond__driven. Facebook is Beyond Driven. The TikTok is at Beyond.driven. And then obviously we have our website.
Okay.
So
I'll link to all that, by the way.
That's great. Yeah, anybody can access us there. Reach out. We have a lot of free resources that we offer people who are struggling. And I just want to encourage, like, if anybody's listening right now, man, I just want to encourage you, please. Like, there's so many men struggling in silence, and believe me when I say this, like, when you work on yourself, God is going to naturally put people in your life that you can help, and that's the power of personal development, is you work on you, and then inevitably it's like links of a chain, man. I'm holding on the guy in front of me. I'm holding on the guy behind me. He's holding on the next guy. And that's how we all help one another. And even just an encouraging word from a brother when you're in a dark time can be so powerful. So, I just want to let you guys know you're never alone. Like, there's no comparing, like, this guy has a better life than this guy. Like, nobody can take what the Lord has for you. It's for you. And no man can ever interfere with that. And know that God is, he's growing you through this trial. You're going through something in your life. Just be patient, man. The Lord's working on you. Sometimes God does stuff in us before he does it for us,
Dude, that's really cool. Okay, guys, if you felt something, if you feel like you want to reach out to Tim, do it. I know Tim will respond. I know you have free resources.
Yep.
I know you're here. Your mission is to help dudes feel less alone and make those marriages awesome. So, Tim, thank you so much, buddy. This has been incredible. Excited to talk to you again in the future.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me, brother.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. More importantly, I hope you feel closer to your Creator. If you find yourself wanting to strengthen your relationship with God, I'm a huge fan of the Skylight app. It's full of beautiful, high-quality daily spiritual practices. Finally, never forget, in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him.